Hello. Some of you have been watching me for a very long time, some through COVID, some way before then, some during the Trump assassination investigation. It's time to talk about what's actually going on here. We live in a very sick culture, and it needs a rescue mission. Hello, everyone. Dr. Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity here, and I'm going to deviate a little bit or a lot from the Trump assassination here if you're watching this out in YouTube or Rumble, because we have to talk about the larger context. Here's why it's so important that we talk about the Trump assassination and attempt and get that actually right, or any of these other things we have to get right, because we're on a really bad path right now. And a lot of people know that. And you will know that if you talk to young people who are demoralized, not depressed. Depressed you can fix with talking or maybe some chemical help stabilization for a bit. I'm talking demoralized. Demoralized is when you've kind of lost all hope for the future. You're smart, you're intelligent, and somehow you can't square the circle because things don't line up. Well, we're going to talk about that today because of this explosive interview that came out. And we're going to talk about, are we healthy? No, we're not. I'm going to make the case that we are in an anti-life cult. Here's how I define a cult. A cult is an organized system of thinking that works against your best interest. On balance, it's a negative thing for you. We live in a cult by that definition, so it's time to break free of that. Yes, we're going to need some sort of an intervention, but people are waking up, and this is important. So let's start with this. I mean, WTF happened? This is an obesity map over time, with blue being a good color that's under 10%, green, yellow, orange, and red getting worse and worse. Look at this. That is an epidemic. That is killing hundreds of thousands of people every year. Look at that black right through the center of that by 2020. Starts out in 1985, kind of okay, and it gets progressively less and less okay. If we were a healthy culture, and I don't mean just not obese, if we were healthy at all, we would go, time out, what happened? How do we fix this? And there's something we need to do about this. This is a map of misery in chronic disease and metabolic disease and death. This is not good. Okay. And we know it's not good. And we're all just kind of shrugging as a culture, kind of going, well, what are you going to do? It's just, I guess it happened. People got lazy. People got sloppy, as if somehow the people were to blame for this whole thing. And then, this has gone on too long when somewhere around 2020, they started saying, well, maybe we should just put all these really obese people on the cover of Sports Illustrated and other things like that for their swimsuit issue. And the answer is no, this is not healthy. We can't normalize this. We can't pretend like this is okay. It's not okay. So what happened? Well, this is an absolute must-watch episode on Tucker Carlson with Casey Means and her brother, Callie. You got to watch these things, right? She was a Stanford-educated surgeon, and her brother was a lobbyist for pharma and the food industry. Pharma and food, how do those two things go together? Like a hand in glove. We have been marketed to, sold, addictive, sick-making foods, where they sell you the sickness to put in your mouth, and then they sell you the pills to try and cover up the symptoms from the sickness. It is a gross machine. It is anti-life. The people who are involved in this, just like the people who foisted the opioid crisis on people, killing people, this is anti-life. And once you recognize that and see it for what it is, it's really important. So this episode has made some real splashes in my own household recently. It's made real splashes in the household of everybody who works with me at Peak Prosperity. Big, big splashes. People who already were on the healthy health food, understanding organic foods, or at least nutrient-dense foods, or not ultra-processed foods, already knew these things, and still, you see what's happening here. And so those are the chapters right there. There's the link down below. It's about 2 hours. It is going to be worth every minute of your time. In fact, I would recommend you listen to it twice. Once, because it's going to just blast you with information, and the second time so you can actually take all of that in. So there's Casey down below, and I want to just pull just one tiny piece from this. It's just a couple minutes long. This is about a 4-minute clip, and I'm only going to play about half of it. This just talking about the true anti-life nature of our culture.
I'm Protestant. I've never had a problem with birth control, never thought about it. But at all. So that's my position, or has been my position, which is actually radically changing as we speak. But I've always felt that way. So I never really thought about it. But I always noticed that you were not allowed to criticize the pill, period. Like that was not allowed in the world I grew up in. You could have all kinds of kooky opinions. You cannot criticize the birth control pill. And now I feel like maybe we were played a little bit. Why you're laughing sardonically?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak as a physician, but I can also just speak as a woman who has taken all these different medications because it's liberation.
Yeah.
It's liberation.
Yes.
We can do whatever we want, and who needs to get a period when you can, work in the hospital 100 hours a week and put off having, and then I freeze my eggs at 37 and have kids, So as a woman, I mean, I do think, of course, these drugs have helped in some ways, but we are prescribing them like candy. We're prescribing them for acne. We're prescribing them for PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, the leading cause of infertility in the United States, which is a metabolic issue driven by our food, and how the food interacts with genetics. And then, of course, for birth control. So you've got these medications that are literally shutting down the hormones in the female body that create this cyclical life-giving nature of women. We basically told women these hormones don't matter. Your ability to create the most miracle of any miracles, which is create life, just shut it down. There's no impacts. That's crazy to me. And as I've woken up from this, I'm realized like your cycle and having these hormonal cycles is part and parcel with our health in every possible way, and also with the miracle of creating life. And so for years, you just lose the biofeedback of what's happening with your cycle. It is one of the key barometers of female health. How is your cycle doing? Is it regular? Is it heavy? And we just shut it down and say there's no repercussions for that, which I think gets to a larger issue, which is a disrespect of life, right?
Yes.
It's a disrespect of things that create life. And I think about, you've got the pill and it just goes hand in hand with the rise. And this is going to seem a little far out there, but like, it goes rise and rhyme with the hand of industrial agriculture, the spraying of these pesticides, the things that give life in this world, which are women and soil. We have tried to dominate and shut down the cycles.
Women in soil. I mean, such a great point. And it goes on from here, and there's more great points. They just keep rolling and on. So this is actually a big part of what I've been doing at Peak Prosperity and trying to get people ready. Remember, if you watched me during COVID, I would end cryptically with this whole plant to garden thing. There was a number of stacked levels behind that. One, I thought maybe there could be food insecurity issues that would come along because of supply chain breakdowns. But more importantly, when you start to garden, you reconnect with life. You get the dirt back under your fingernails and you are growing nutrient-dense, healthier foods than you could possibly get from the grocery store, or even from your organic farmer at the farmer's market on Saturday. There's just something about literally going from garden to table. But it's the reconnection that's a really important part of that. And it's a reconnection with life. I'm old enough where I know something that people who are half my age don't know, which is how much life is missing from the landscape now. How many turtles aren't on the roads anymore, how many frogs you don't hear anymore, how many insects are just missing, the big rhinoceros beetles, walking sticks. Kids today probably don't even know what a walking stick is, right? They were everywhere when I was growing up. Luna moth, who's even seen a Luna moth? On and on and on. This year, we saw one monarch butterfly, and there's just no eggs and no pupa or caterpillars on any of the milkweed that we leave out there. So life is actually being destroyed, and nobody seems to care. But by nobody, I mean our center mass of our culture. Our culture has become very anti-life. And we could express that in not respecting the life of the soil, not respecting the life that goes on within women. Remember, one of the things that got me a strike on YouTube right away was when I pointed out too many months before you were allowed to talk about this, that the mRNA Magic Holy jab was actually disrupting women's menstrual cycles, right? And that got me a strike right away. Maybe it will again. I don't know. But that's really anti-life when you can't even observe simple facts that have a profound impact on somebody's life. And somehow that's not okay. Right? Evie and I, we wanted to watch the rock climbing at the Olympics. We both love rock climbing. We're both rock climbers. It's just really fun to watch how talented and amazing these people are today, the boys and the girls, the men and the women. It's astonishing how good they are. So really, it's a lot of fun. So we had to purchase this program. We use Peacock, right? NBC. And you still purchase it, and they were still throwing ads at you all the time. And by the way, congrats, Brooke Rabbittu, for taking the silver for the U.S. And, of course, Yanya Garnbrett, unbelievable. World's best in gold. She's amazing. Every single commercial was a pharma commercial. here in the US. I presume that wasn't true elsewhere in the world, but it was just pharma, 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 pharma. It was eczema and this and that. It was just all pharma funding. It was amazing. It was astonishing. There was almost no other ads than pharma ads. And so how is it that we have all these chronic conditions and we're so sick that it's worth marketing direct to consumer for all of these different pharma ads? And it's time to talk about that and how bad it is. And that's what this exposes. And here, this is being exposed across a couple of dimensions, the pharma dimension, but it's the food dimension, because the first thing that gets you ill is the stuff you put in your mouth every day. And we're taking in literal poisons. Okay. So this is a really good thread on Twitter. You can read Ben Smith. He talks about the same thing, talking about how, and there's a reason that there's a bunch of cigarettes in a McDonald's carton like that, which is that it turns out that in America, a lot of our what are called highly processed foods, which an example of that would be that mac and cheese right there. That's an example of a highly processed food. Good luck finding that color orange in nature or anything that's got that texture or taste combination. In fact, these things have all been put together for us by scientists who are looking to create addiction through food. They just turn their attention from cigarettes to something else. Like if people are going to get cranky about us getting people addicted to the cancer sticks, maybe we can get them addicted to something else. It's just this is what we do. I'm an addiction scientist. Let me point my talents this direction versus that direction. So I highly recommend you look at that thread right there. You know, this is it's right in here. So this is in I got this in Wiley Research. You know me, I like my science. Let me get my little tool out here, my little laser pointer thing. So it turns out that U.S. tobacco companies bought a lot of food companies when they finally went through the court systems. They fought it forever and ever and ever. They had experts disputing the idea that there was any sort of a connection between the cancer sticks and cancer, etc. Right? So then when that finally got spanked down in the courts and all of a sudden they had to pay some money and stuff, they said, wow, well, it's still a very cash-rich industry. So what do you do with that cash? Well, they bought food companies. Ta-da! And I don't think that's a good idea, and probably somebody ought to have thought that one through. But they didn't. So here we are. Turns out, quote, U.S. tobacco companies selectively disseminated what are called hyper-palatable foods into the U.S. food system, empirical evidence, and current implications. So this is from a September 2023 article. There's lots of articles just like this. This isn't a new discovery by any stretch of the imagination. So here, what did they do in this study? U.S. tobacco companies had owned leading U.S. food companies from 1980 to 2001. Now, remember that obesity map? Starting around 1980, something went seriously off the rails. It wasn't an accident. It was intentional, and it was by design. And sure, yeah, companies can go ahead and try and do stuff that's underhanded and evil and nasty. And that's where the regulators are supposed to come in. So this is why I am really, really, really set against the people who think that somehow big government is an answer, or that we just need our democracy preserved. If we just elect in more people and have a bigger committee of government people running things, that somehow that's going to work well, because I'm one of these people. If it already has failed, I don't want to keep doing it, right? So this has already been proven a failed model where the regulators completely are not regulating for public health, for public good, for public anything. They are regulating to help companies make more money. And companies make more money when you are sick and addicted. And then at the end, they make money when you die, right? The whole thing, that's the system. So this is what people are waking up to. And this is why the Trump assassination attempt investigation, and this is why everything I'm doing at Peak Prosperity, it all fits under this one umbrella of saying we have to break out of our trance and understand what's happening. This is as if I'm slapping you and you're driving down the highway and I'm trying to slap you and say there is a drunk driver in front of you who's trying to run you off the road. They're not a normal functioning human like you would like to be operating heavy machinery, and they are trying to harm you because they make money harming you, and then they make money after you've been harmed. That is the system, hand in glove, right? So they owned a lot of these companies from 1980 to 2001, but it's not like all of a sudden in 2001 when they divested from them or sold them off that these companies suddenly figured out that they'd rather not be addiction specialists. The die was cast, and here we are playing the game as it's been configured. So the findings in this particular study, they said, well, tobacco-owned foods were 29% more likely to be classified as fat and sodium, HPF, hyperpalatable foods, right? And 80% more likely to be classified as carbohydrate and sodium, HPF, or hyperpalatable foods, than foods that were not tobacco-owned between 88 and 2001. P-value 0.005, less than 5/1000ths of a chance of that being randomly, accidentally true. This is intentional, in other words, okay? Conclusions. Tobacco companies appear to have selectively disseminated hyper-palatable foods into the U.S. food system between 1988 and 2001. So let us back up. This is what it looks like when you disseminate hyper-palatable foods into the U.S. food system. This causes over 600,000 deaths per year in the United States. That's what we're talking about. This is astonishingly bad. This is evil. Just so you understand what's going on. And then on the back end of this, the other thing that Casey and Callie point out is that on the back end of this, the solution that they're coming up with is for the U.S. government to spend up to $3 trillion providing Ozempic, the satiety drug, the drug you take that makes you feel full or satiated earlier so you don't eat quite as much. But if you're still eating true garbage that causes metabolic disorder, you're just eating less of it because you're taking the Ozempic, which, by the way, trust me, is going to turn out to have long-term negative health consequences that we hadn't anticipated, because that's how the game always seems to work. So this is a really astonishingly crappy system, okay? And this is what the government is attempting to preserve and protect, and this is what they're clinging to for dear life, and this is why we're getting an unfair shake in the Trump assassination investigation, et cetera. It all ties together. So we have to understand who and what we're up against, and they don't think like you or I. They think nothing of harming people, okay? Now, what is metabolic syndrome? Well, you can see it up top there. It's inflammatory diseases like arthritis. It's respiratory diseases, sleep apnea. If your sleep is bad, your life is bad. It's going to be GERD, the so-called GERD diseases. You got fatty liver disease, esophagus, uterus, pancreas, kidney cancers. You've got memory loss, depression, polycystic ovarian disease, which you just heard Callie mentioned there. Casey mentioned there, you've got high triglycerides, insulin resistant hypertension, low HDL, which is the good cholesterol. You got high bad cholesterol. You got high blood sugars, and diabetes and heart disease and stroke. So that's what metabolic syndrome is. It is a nasty collection of things. It is really awful. And by the way, the prevalence of metabolic syndrome among U.S. adults now is approaching 50% in certain age categories. So no bueno. Obviously, very, very bad. And by the way, having vitamin D, adequate vitamin D, actually detunes and helps make a lot of the metabolic syndrome go away. It's actually a fairly stunning regression of about 20% metabolic syndrome goes away for each 10 nanograms per ml of vitamin D you get above the sufficiency level, the insufficiency level. So get your vitamin D levels up. It's always been an obvious and good thing to do. Now let's do some of the math here. It turns out that the United States here has the lowest life expectancy of any what we'd call modern culture out there, industrialized nation. Japan at the highest at 84.5 years, the United States anchoring the bottom at 78.9. If the United States just had average life expectancy, Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, Netherlands, just average, clocking in at just over 82 years, well, that would be about 3 more years of life for the average U.S. citizen with 330 million people, averaging 3 more years of life. That is 1 billion life years missing. 1 billion life years. 1 billion life years so that some companies can just make a few more bucks to distribute awesome returns to their shareholders. This is why you've heard me say over and over again, for the love of money is the root of all evil. Money itself is not necessarily good or bad. It's medium of exchange. It's an abstraction. It's actually neutral, but it's our relationship to money. And when some people have a relationship to money where they want more of it so badly that they'll harm you, they'll kill you, your children, your loved ones. They will gladly do that. They will not even gladly, unthinkingly, without a second thought, because that will give them more money. So we have a money problem in this country, and we're going to have to talk about that. It's a spiritual crisis for sure in many dimensions, because who would actually harm people for a couple extra bucks? And by the way, dollars are it's an abstraction. They're a very weird thing to get all wrapped up around. But video games have been specifically designed to be addictive as well, right? And a lot of people report that when you go to video game instruction camp to learn how to code these things as a programmer, that the video game designers have to go through something called dopamine camp. You have to learn what the reward structures are and how to pace the rewards of video games so that there's just the right trickle of dopamine so that you keep people just craving that next hit. And so now we can see here, just doing a simple Google search, that, well, there are places now that deal with video game addictions and how to get people off of that, and whole Reddit threads around this. And it turns out it's a whole thing. So we're addicting ourselves with cigarettes, with food, with alcohol, with video games, of course, with porn, obviously. And funny, when love the ironies of these things. When I type Pornhub addiction in at the top is a search term just to get this whole thing started, the first thing that you can click on, of course, are addiction porn videos at Pornhub. Never one to leave an opportunity on the table, are they? Right? And so people are addicted, and this is very damaging. Porn addictions, very damaging to the development of a healthy sexuality in people's lives. Addiction to foods it creates a very damaging relationship to a healthy sense of self. We have video games, a diversionary thing, very damaging to people's development. All of these things combine then into this idea that it's just that anything that would help you be distracted, distressed, diseased, those are the things that somehow float to the top, and those are easy to do in our culture. They're easy. There's reward systems. There's regulatory protections for you if you want to do those things. But if you want to do the other things in life, things that are actually life affirming, now those are hard. Here's an example. If it's a net positive, then it's going to be a hard process. So you Google it up. What permissions do I need to say install a pond on my farm, right? Well, farm pond's going to require permissions from federal, state, local planning bodies, any one of whom can say, no, of course not. United States Army Corps of Engineers, of course, is going to have to get involved. Must approve plans for any recreational ponds. You have to check in with the state DEP. You got natural resources, environmental management agencies. You got regulations of the ponds, including those on farms. All 50 states. Dude, you want to put a pond in? There's rules, permission forms. It's going to be a giant, giant process. And of course, putting a pond in is just an awesome thing, right? Who didn't grow up around a pond like I did? They're awesome. The ponds are there. You learn about things like frogs and turtles and water, and they're awesome and very life-affirming, which means, of course, they're very hard to do. Ask a similar question, what permission do I need to use pesticides around my home? And nothing comes up but a bunch of ads. I can go down to Home Depot or any other place, not to pick on Home Depot. I could go somewhere and buy as many pesticides as I want, spray them all over my property, and nobody is going to say nothing to me. There's no forms. I haven't violated nothing, right? That's just the world I live in. So if it's anti-life, which this is, well, that's just easy. How much do you want, right? If I want to put a pond in, well, that's hard. Whoa, we're going to have a lot of people involved, and any one of whom could say no, and many of whom will. And it'll be very expensive, and it'll be very hard, and it'll be like running through a thicket of bushes, and this is like sliding down the slip and slide of life with it's greased with soapy bubbles. So the easy hard framework is something I want to introduce you to then, because this is a really helpful framework. This is an example of what we use at Peak Prosperity all the time. My subscribers are intimately familiar with this by now. And this comes to us courtesy of Dave Fairtex, who writes our weekly market update. As you can see straight down there, this is a premium offering. We have both free as well as premium offerings at Peak Prosperity. So Dave does an amazing weekly write-up for us, which is about the markets, but it's more than that. It's also Dave's tour of the news in his very sardonic way of cataloging all of that. It's much admired and looked forward to by our subscribers. And one of the things he did for us, I think it was even in just a comment under something, he put up something called the easy hard table. And he just said, look, some things are just easy because that's what the system wants. He said, quote, here's a repost of the updated easy versus hard table on request from a member. what the oligarchy wants us to do, that's easy, and what their media, water carrier, narrative drivers tell us is good or easy versus what they kind of don't want us to do, which is hard. So in the financial world, you know what's easy? NVIDIA, woo, floating off to the skies. You know what's hard? ExxonMobil, energy companies, terrible, languishing, awful. Miners, terrible, awful. NVIDIA, yes. Digital money, super easy. You glowing articles about digital money. Cash, oh gosh, it's got germs on it and it's hard to track and people are doing away with it. Nobody likes it anymore. That's just hard. You know, it's easy. Equities. Oh, it's an admiring article about how equities are going up and to the right and how awesome it is. But gold and silver, when they go up, you get all these trash talk articles on there. It's just hard. It's no good. But the way you interpret these things, when you see barons just trashing gold or MSNBC writing bad stuff about cash or whatever's happening, all the stuff trash talking about oil and all of that stuff, just understand that's just because the oligarchy doesn't want you wanting those things. It wants you focusing on the easy stuff. It wants you in cashless money, digital money, which actually serves their purposes because now they can track you. And now they can dial it up. And in fact, if they need to, if you've been a bad boy or girl, they can just flick the switch and your money is no longer useful. It doesn't work anymore. That level of control they want. NVIDIA is making stuff for AI, which they're all agog over. And if you look at how many data centers are being slammed in all over the place. And you're not going to hear one article, because those are on the easy column. You're not going to hear one article about how those data centers are chewing up vast quantities of electricity and therefore contributing to climate change or anything like that. You're only going to hear about how awesome AI is, right? Because that's in the easy column. So easy is stuff that the oligarchy wants, the deep state wants, that the system wants, that the government wants. Hard is the stuff they don't want, and they use their foot soldiers in the media to keep reinforcing that in a propagandistic fashion day after day after day. All right, what else? Let's talk about the easy hard framework in terms of COVID-19 and what we saw, right? You know what was easy? Approval for on-patent medications, expensive ones, right? Paxlovid, Molnupiravir, Remdesivir. You know what was hard? Approval for off-patent cheap medications like HCQ and IVM. You know what was easy? Vaccination. Everybody's going to get vaccinated. It's just amazing. You know what was hard? Talking about nutritional supplements, which could include vitamin D. One of the most astonishingly strong, positive correlations for people having a better outcome and not going to the ICU and not dying was having a high level of vitamin D in their serum. Easy. Studies are magnificent and strong and powerful. But that was hard, very hard to get conversations about that going. What was easy was health as a subscription model. Hey, you're going to need booster, just to not get sick, right? They talked about that easy. What was hard was talking about natural immunity. Remember, that was a right-wing, alt-right theory for a while. It's like, it was also actually how things actually are forever and ever. So we had that going on. And then we had, they were publishing extensive studies on expensive compounds that don't work. That was easy. Publishing studies on cheap compounds that did work hard. Took 20, 30 months to get those published. The other ones went into preprint that afternoon. Masks, easy. Exercise, harder. mRNA vaccines, easy. Vitamin D, very, very hard, very hard. Lockdowns, easy. Oh, very important. Herd immunity. Kind of a tricky concept. Couldn't really get that talked about, etc. So, in vaccinating children versus showing that children don't actually get COVID at all. These things, what you shall know them by their deeds. Things that are easy are the things they want. Things that are hard are the things they don't want. So it's kind of weird then when we get to food, right? Synthetic meats and factory farms and growing foods on nutrient mine, depleted soils, pesticides, herbicides, eating bugs, all easy. What's really hard, though, is talking about eating beef, nutritious foods, regenerative farming, selling or consuming raw milk. All of these things are really hard. And they might tell you at some point about one person that they think may have possibly died from raw milk, but they won't talk about the 686,000 people who are going to die this year from the metabolic shit show that comes with the stuff in the easy column. So that's just how that whole framework works, and we can boil it all down and make it really easy. This is what it boils down to. Life. In the easy column for them is anything that harms, degrades, or ends life early. They're all for it. 100% of the time. That's just how it works. What's hard is doing things that affirm, improve, or actually enhance life and lives for people. That's the easy, hard framework, and that's wrapping it around this whole idea that our food system and our pharma system and our medical system is like a unholy trinity that is there to get you sick and then make money off of your sickness. And that's been the whole thing. And if you're done with that, if you're all done with that and you want to figure out some other way to live, then I invite you to come to Peak Prosperity. We're going to be talking about more. Here's what part 2 of this is going to be about. There's 6 simple things we can do to create a world worth inheriting. That's what we're going to be talking about back at Peak Prosperity. So for all my members, come on back, join me there, and let's have this conversation because it's time to get positive. There's a lot of things we could do, and it's time we started doing them. For everybody else, thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of this, and comments down below. Can't wait to hear what you think about this. But it's game on. Whatever you do, please plant a garden and affirm life.